Stephen King once wrote, "I never had any friends later on like the ones I had when I was 12. Why was it when we were young like that? We had so many adventures, like so much happened. I think I've just figured it out. I probably could have sussed it out before, but I'd never given it my full concentration until now." It's 4:21 AM, Tuesday, 25th of March, 2025. I'm writing this in bed with my first coffee of the day. The coffee is shockingly bad, as I have run out of my usual fresh beans. It's the straight out the jar instant kind. It's not even a good jar. Lisa is frugal when she is shopping and buys the cheapest jar of coffee she can. She swears she cannot taste any difference from my Mexican imported beans. I buy them each month from Dark Arts Coffee in Hackney, made with a twist of raspberry sherbet, cherry and vanilla. The shock of just how bad Lisa's instant coffee is wakes me though with a jolt of inspiration, and for that I owe it my gratitude. So why then, when we were kids, did we have so many magical encounters? The reason we had countless adventures was due to the fact we were still learning about our surroundings. That, and we had no fear or responsibilities. We travelled by foot or skateboard, at best a BMX, and we had never gone too far. Everything was brand new. As we travelled by foot, we explored every empty building, every ditch, every barn. Getting to know your surroundings is often an adventure. Chapter 1. First motorcycles and T-Rex. We all bought our first motorcycles for different reasons. I had wanted one since I was knee-high. But when I was 16, doing a 2-hour bus journey to school 5 days a week and a 2-hour bus journey home each day, I was prime candidate for getting a little motorcycle. What I realised fast, however, was on those two wheels I could venture out into places unknown to me at the time, and I did pretty much straight away too. Even the first few days I had the bike, I rode it to school as soon as I got it. I was older than my two best friends I hung with. They still had a month or two to turn 16, which is the legal age to ride in the UK. So I was the only one with a motorcycle. So anyway, Stan, my friend, lived 3 miles from school. Now I had wheels, we figured we could bunk off from school, ride back to his folks' home and watch the afternoon matinee movie on TV. There we could make a fried egg sandwich and get back in time for registration in last class. The only trouble was, we couldn't go on the road, we'd get stopped by the police. Stan never had a helmet, and even if he did have a lid, anyone on a 50cc giving a pillion ride has got to be illegal. So Stan said he knew this maze of mud lanes and tracks that led all the way back to Holbridge, his hometown. The plan was set. So we met up by the sweet shop. I think it was called the Hooley store. I'm not 100%, but that name echoes in my head and it must have come from then. The place was just about 50 yards down from the school. A final twist was announced to the plan when Stan had told Brian, and he also wanted to come. So we met up by the Hooley store. There was a dirt lane next to it, and Stan said that was the first one we needed to take. It was there they both somehow climbed on the back of my 50cc motorcycle. That poor bike. I was squashed up, virtually riding the tank. We set off down the lane. It was January and the mud was like rock where it was so cold. It was bumpy as hell, dipping in and out. Brian fell off the back multiple times, and for me, I remember the struggle was real. It was as hard as hell balancing the weight, and my 16-year-old nutsack never quite recovered from the beating it took. Squashed into the tank and every bump like an iron hammer smacking up into my balls. In between the cries of pain, I soon realised Stan had no bloody idea where he was going. He knew there was lanes aiming towards the direction of Holbridge, but he never really knew them, and each time we came to a crossroads he'd scratch his head and have to guess a route to take. Often it would lead us up someone's driveway, and the people who lived down those muddy lanes were always a certain kind of folk. People who don't like people with the big old trucks. Everyone had a horse box on the back, and you know they had a shotgun indoors. The people who chop their own wood, the kind of people who sell scrap metal and have 15 fridge freezers in their yard. The types of people with 7 boys all called Henry. People with big dogs on chains and hand-painted signs that read "Get out" or "Get dead," always painted in blood. All of the homes having corrugated tin roofs stuck down with chewing gum and blue tack. We accidentally ended up halfway down someone's driveway thinking it was the lane until we saw a tractor tyre hanging on a tree. I say tractor tyre, it may have been a lorry tyre. What I mean is it was not a car tyre, it was a huge big old tyre. I say tyre, but to be more precise, it was half a tyre. The bottom section had been eaten, it was gone, it had been ripped apart, it looked like it had met a T-Rex. We all noticed it at the same time, and someone said, "What the hell's happened to that tyre?" It was exactly at that moment we heard the rattle of a heavy chain. There was a barn and the doors were closed, but there was a hole in the bottom of the barn doors. It was not a hatch, nor was it man-made. It was a hole that looked like it had been eaten. Something had eaten a 2-foot hole through the solid wood doors. We knew what had done it. It was a huge dog. I can't tell you what type of dog it was, because as I saw it, I shut my eyes and prepared to die. The dog was charging towards us. It was on a chain, but the chain never seemed to run out of slack. He was heading right at us at 63 miles an hour. The dog had been in the barn, hidden away, waiting for little schoolboys. Today was his lucky day. We all jumped off the bike and I frantically turned it around. I think I just picked it up and threw it 180. Stan and Brian did the 100-meter dash to the end of the lane in 7.5, and I was hot on their tail in a screaming first gear that almost blew up the bike. The chain did run out of slack. I looked back and the beast had made it to just where we had been standing. It was foaming at the mouth and I swear there was blood on his teeth. I had dreams about what was in that barn for years to come. In the end, we got to Stan's folks' home and we were covered in scratches from blackberry bushes and our arms stung by stinging nettles. But I remember finding those roads a kick, not knowing what was going to be around each corner, seeing new things. It had suddenly become an adventure. Motorcycles were fun. I can't remember what film we watched. I remember the egg sandwich with not enough butter but too much ketchup. Stan could not use too much butter as his folks would always notice. They'd spot shit like that. Ketchup they couldn't tell. I'd ask him why and he'd say it's easy, they don't use it. I remember Stan putting everything back in his home just so his folks could never tell we'd been there. I don't remember the journey back to school though, and I don't know why. We had to have gone back, and maybe it's this. I remember the way to Stan's because it was the first time I'd travelled those lanes. Remember, for it was unfamiliar, new, the great unknown. The moment it's known to you, you stop remembering. Maybe. I don't know. Bus wanker. The most simple way to explore is by foot. It's God's way, I guess. The trouble with putting one foot in front of the other and just taking off is this. Most people live somewhere they know. Stop there. Let's talk about me so I can relate this dilemma through. I live in an apartment in a town. The town is a few miles in diameter. I know it very well. There are no surprises for me to encounter in my hometown. The next town over in any direction I also know extremely well. And the biggest surprises they could have in store for me would be mundane and dull for sure. If there was something worth seeing in those towns, I'd know about it. For you see, I know many people in those surrounding towns, and they all flock to my town at night and on the weekends because the town I'm in is shite, but it's the best of the shite bunch. So what am I getting at? To get anywhere new, to explore this world in the 21st century, I'd have to walk at least 2 or 3 days. I'd have to march 2 or 3 days to get somewhere I know just a little less than here. It would not be real exploring, but let's walk 3 days to get somewhere I know a little less than here. To explore somewhere exciting, I'd have to march at least a week or maybe 10 days. And you know, and I know, that's never going to happen, not in this life. Even if another universe it did, let's say I had 2 weeks off work, 10 days to walk somewhere, then 4 days to explore when I arrived, that would leave me clean out of time. You know what I say about walking? Fuck walking. But wait, how about you get public transport to the destination? A train, bus or taxi? I used to get a bus at school. It was one of the saddest times of my life. I mean it. It haunted me then. It would kill me now. Is there anything more depressing than a bus? Maybe a dying hungry dog being teased by a young kid with a hot roast chicken on a stick. On the bus, you just get going, the driver pulls over. Then you get the nut that gets on and counts her whole fare out in penny coins. After 12 minutes of counting, she is short. The driver is a job's worth and won't let her on, so you end up paying the rest of her fare. For your kindness, she comes and sits next to you. She pulls out a hamster called Dave from her pocket. He's covered in Pringle crisp crumbs and starts talking to him. She opens her handbag and it's full of cream cakes, not in a box, just loose, all stuck together and bits of bobs all over them. Have a cake, love. There's 2 kids at the back harassing a young schoolgirl, flicking a lighter by her hair. You have to defuse that because the driver's blanking it. There's a drunk guy sat in his own piss, happy as anything, singing Sweet Caroline. Children wiping bogies on the windows and the seats. A mum of 3 who's only 14 herself, calling all her kids every bad name you can imagine and telling them she'll knock them out if they don't stop going on about sweets. There's always that bloke who's at least 6'4", don't make eye contact with anyone, muttering to himself. If you look closely, he's shaking. No, he's not shaking, he's vibrating. Look even closer, he's holding a screwed up photo of his ex-wife and slowly screwing it tighter and tighter. Then he starts squeezing his own hands. You can actually hear the bones in his fingers breaking. He's talking faster and faster, something about God, something about bastard rolling pin, deep darkness, mercy, forgive me. No man, keep the bus. Trains used to be more fun back in the day when you could be trapped in a carriage with only 2 doors and everyone got high and swung on the doors. When you were living on a knife edge because the next stop a gang of skinheads or punks could get on and fleece you for your dinner money or steal your trainers. The good old days when trains were exciting. Nowadays, trains are as sad as anything. Ever sat and watched 78 people looking at a phone screen in silence? It has an end of the world feeling to it. The silence evokes a sound like the earth screaming. And taxis, oh man. Everyone knows 4 out of 10 taxi drivers are serial killers. The other 6 will kill you with their life story. Growing up in the 60s in South London and a 40-minute story about that one time they had Sean Connery in their cab. Sean Connery must have been in every cab in London at one time or another. You know, I've only ever been in 3 taxis that Sean Connery didn't travel in. They were all in New York. However, the 4th cab I got in New York on the Lower East Side, the driver told me the same James Bond story. I was on the corner of Ludlow and Grand. I kid you not, this son of a bitch limey, Sean Connery, flagged me down. James Bond in my taxi here in the village, and so on. So you know what I say about public transport? Yeah, you know it. Adventure, motorcycle, myth. I live in the county of Essex. It's flat and it's really overpopulated. It's awful for riding a motorcycle, but it's good for keeping you on your toes. Everyone is out to kill you. 90% of cars are Range Rovers. The other 2% are BMW or Mercedes. 99.5% of all people are on the telephone driving. 50% are on cocaine. 82% are so entitled they would never dream of indicating or stopping at a red light. These people will kill you as quick as you can say frappuccino to go. So when we jump on our motorcycle, we get away from Essex. I rarely go out for an hour or a short ride. It's almost always for the whole day or a weekend. For there you'll find adventure. Motorcycles will get you away, man. Try getting out of Essex in a car, it'll take hours, I kid you not. The beauty of a motorcycle is in 1 hour, I'm out. It don't matter even if the roads are stationary. We get out of our own area, we leave what we know behind and head for the lesser known. It does not matter what you ride. In 1912, Carl Stearns Clancy rode around the world on a Henderson motorcycle. They say he was the first ever to do so. He had to abandon some countries because they simply had no roads. He had to abandon others because they had no fuel. He had an adventure for sure, and it wasn't an adventure motorcycle. Go figure. In 1973, Ted Simon also circumnavigated the globe on a motorcycle. He chose a 500cc Triumph. He had an open face helmet, leather flying jacket, no GPS, just basic gear. It was an incredible feat. He had borrowed a demo bike just weeks before to pass his motorcycle test on and just set off. People have ridden just about every kind of motorcycle around the world now, 50cc mopeds included. You can have an adventure in one day. I'm not saying you need to go around the world to do it. I'm just pointing out that any bike can do that. The gateway to adventure is just over the hill. It is lying there like a sun-kissed mermaid just over the horizon. She is beyond the edge of town, past the Hooley store, way down that lane where the T-Rex dog lay in wait. It's high on the Pyrenees mountains where the winds let rip. It's down the road a piece under tomorrow's new moon. It is somewhere out there in the desert heat. It is in the ancient ruins of Matera. It's in downtown Oceanside where the blood spills. It is under the shade of a tree on a hot tiled path in Playa de Ora. It is on the back of an open platform on a rattling train in the lowlands. It is where you end up after turning off the sat-nav and letting the road lead you. There is no such thing as an adventure bike. It's just a motorcycle. You have one. He has one. She got one. I got one. They got one. We got one. You have one. He has one. She got one. I got one. They got one. We got one. great train heist drama. I need to tell this story because it's about discovery and adventure. My parents moved a few times when I was a kid, so I'd have to say goodbye to my friends and find more. When I was 6 years old, we moved to a place called Shoebury. It's a coastal town in the southeast of England. It's a town of two halves, some of it kind of boring suburban streets. The rest is like an English version of the Bronx. You had to be a good runner or not feel pain at all. A stone's throw from where we lived there was an artillery barracks, a huge place, big fences all around, barbed wire tops, patrols in Land Rovers or with dogs constantly marching around. It had trains that ran in and out of the grounds via huge lock gates. This place is the reason I got arrested at 8 years old. So when I was 8, I made a few good solid friends. We were all fascinated by trains and the giant buildings. So one day we waited till a patrol had gone by and we climbed the 6-foot fence. Like cats, we effortlessly manoeuvred over the barbed wire, jumped down into the long grass that surrounded the complex. We crawled on our bellies like proper commandos, heading steadily towards the buildings. Eventually we found a set of concrete stairs, sort of concealed in the long grass. We went down them and through a door, and inside was a long corridor with jail cells on each side. No one was in any of the cells. It smelt musky and we thought it was really cool. We just hung out there. There was a door at the far end that took you back up another set of stairs into the field. Doing so, we avoided the second fence. From this field, it was around 200 yards to the trains and the main buildings. We were not brave enough to go any further that day. But the next day we come back, and on our way back to the staircase we were spotted by two soldiers in a Land Rover. We made a dash for the fence and they came flat out across the field. There was a ditch in between them and us, and by the time the guys were out of the truck and over the ditch, we were over the fence and straight down some poor old lady's garden alley and garden hopping all the way back to Picasso Way where I lived. Panting, laughing, scared, buzzing, all at the same time. The next day, shit got real. We had a meeting at lunchtime at school and formed a plan. We were going to go back in after school and steal the train. We all wore our army jumpers, blacked out our faces. I kid you not. We had seen at the far side of the field there was a huge fence, much higher than the outer one. We knew we could not climb it without being seen, so I stole a hacksaw from my dad's garage and off we went. The three of us determined to get the train and make history. We scaled the first fence, crawled across the field, went down the stairs into the cells, up the next stairs, crawled across the next field until we got to the foot of the giant fence. We paused and took in the surrounding. The trains were just 50 foot from us, the buildings around 70. There was only a few guards. We waited for a clear moment and I hacksawed through the green wire fence. My dad always had good tools. Then and to this day he still does. If you borrow or even steal a tool from my dad, you can be sure it will be the best money can buy. That little saw was sharp, and in a few minutes we had a hole big enough to get through. We waited ages until no one was in sight, and then like lightning slipped through the fence. We made the 50-foot dash to the train's cargo carriage. It was much higher than it looked from 50 foot away, but we slid open the door and climbed inside in seconds. We closed the door and our torch was on. The train had loads of stuff in boxes. We didn't know what anything was. It turned out at a later date we found out they made bombs and missiles at that artillery barracks. We were probably only in the train a few minutes. We decided not to try and steal it. We decided unanimously we should get back home now. We peered out and immediately were spotted by the two guards with the Alsatians. They were close, but we jumped down and made a sprint for the hole in the fence. We all leapt for it at the same time and got wedged in it. Then we were caught. The dogs were going nuts. One guard held both dogs while the other guard grabbed us all by the scruff of our necks. We were taken to an office and put in a cell. Yes, I said a cell. No questions, straight behind bars. They locked the door and all three of us sat on a tiny wooden bed and shit ourselves. The two guys casually put the kettle on a little gas burner and made a cup of tea for themselves and sat drinking and dunking their biscuits, talking about our fate. Talking about how many years they would keep us there, or whether to send us to the Foreign Legion, feed us to the dogs. These two were really putting the fear of God into us, for what felt like ages. Later, some higher military police come, loaded us into a long wheelbase Land Rover with bench seats, and then took us home. All the kids in the streets' jaws dropped at the sight of us getting marched up to our front doors. When the police explained what happened to my mum, she went absolutely nuts. Wait till your father gets home. I was sent to bed and waited, starving hungry as I was not allowed dinner. I remember my brother and sister tiptoeing up the stairs and whispering through the door, "You're dead." My dad finally got home and came storming up. He was freaking out and screaming, shouting like a lunatic. He asked me what I'd done and I told him the whole thing. The only part I left out was me stealing his hacksaw, because I'd lost it. He loved his tools more than anything in the world. So at the end of all his shouting and screaming, he stood there and asked me, with a kind of psycho look in his eyes, "Did you take my hacksaw? I'm only going to ask you once." Me: "No, I didn't." That was how I got the biggest spanking of my life. Not for breaking in the military base, for lying. And to make matters worse, I got a spanking on an empty stomach. The train heist drama didn't end there. A week later, my parents got a bill for over £2,000. Today, that would be the equivalent of $14,000. That was an insane amount of money. My folks would never have had it. They didn't own a home at that time. They could never have found that money. You could have bought a house back then for 14 grand. So it was then my mum wrote a letter explaining that 3 boys had been in the artillery barracks where bombs and missiles are made. Not once, but a few times, and never been caught. If 3 stupid 8-year-old school kids dressed as commandos could do it that easily, what about a Russian spy? If someone blew up that place, the whole of Shrewsbury and Southend would have been evaporated. At the end of the letter, she said, "You either drop the fine for the fence or she will be forced to tell every major newspaper in the UK." Just like that, the fine was dropped. We were the neighbourhood legends and I never stole another tool from my dad.